I think Ukraine finds itself in somewhat a similar situation to what Georgia did many years ago, but it's much more extreme. And by that I mean in the sense that Ukraine is a much bigger country. It's more strategically important for the Russian Federation and for Europe as well. And what we've seen since September 1st is, for once, more or less of a lull in fighting. There's still violations that happen according to OSCE all the time, but it's not as active as it has been. Fewer people are dying, fewer Ukrainians are dying. But it seems to me that what Russian strategy is now is to take attention away from Ukraine with its actions in Syria, and this has been quite effective within the Russian Federation itself, where we see the Kremlin media really shifting attention, and Ukraine is no longer story number one. Syria is story number one now in the Russian media, and this has also happened in the United States, where everything that Russia does is now seen through the prism of the Syrian conflict in the Middle East. And I think the biggest issue here is that not to forget that both of these are related conflicts. That what Russia is doing in Syria is very much related to its interest in keeping control in Ukraine. And what we know from our European allies, particularly the Germans and the French, who were very much involved in the Minsk process, is now Russia is trying to play nice with the Europeans in the Minsk deal, trying to be a cooperative partner, quote unquote, with the hopes of getting the sanctions removed in January.
And what was the main reason of Russian actions in the East like that? Wasn't it all about the sanctions and their economic failure?
You mean the Russian actions?
Yeah, in Ukraine. Why are they just trying to keep eyes out from Ukraine?
Yeah, of course. I actually think Putin and the rest of his Kremlin advisors miscalculated the Ukraine very badly. I don't think they expected it to go as it did. I don't think they expected it to last. I mean, now the war is almost 2 years long. I don't think they were prepared for such a long conflict.
So they hoped for kind of a blitzkrieg?
I think so. I mean, like a very quick kind of takeover of territory, sort of what happened in Crimea, where the Ukrainians didn't fight. We know now, of course, they were advised not to do so. And I think that was what was expected in the East. But that didn't happen. First of all, the Ukrainian army came together, it gained strength with support from some Western allies, and the Ukrainians fought very valiantly. And Russia has sunk a lot of resources into the East, and they didn't see this coming, I don't think. I don't think it was part of the strategy. I think the strategy was to destabilize Ukraine first, to take over these regions through this hybrid warfare that's hidden, right? Obvious to most of us, but hidden for Russia. And to make it into a frozen conflict, which is what we see happening now. But for 2 years, the Russian Federation has sunk mass amounts of military and financial resources, and I don't think they saw this coming at all.
And speaking about frozen conflicts, Russia really trying to put as much as possible frozen conflicts around itself, but it should be badly for Russian economy as well, shouldn't it?
It's an interesting question that we don't have good estimates of how much Russian financial support of its forces, its volunteer groups in places like Georgia and Moldova and in eastern Ukraine and Crimea is actually costing the Russian government. This information is just difficult to get and almost impossible. And what we do know is that the sanctions are affecting the Russian economy, sanctions over Ukraine. I think the Russian interest in destabilizing its neighbors is primarily that the number one desire for the Russian Federation is to have a pro-Putin regime